He was born on the run. Not into love, not into safety. A woman pressed a newborn to her chest as horses thundered behind her. She didn't look back. She couldn't. One glance might slow her. 1 second might kill him. The man hunting them was his, Pasa. And if that man caught the child, the boy would not live. The woman crossed into the mountains as dawn broke. Her lungs burned. Her arms shook. But the baby stayed quiet, as if he already understood the danger. Why would a father hunt his own son? And what kind of child is born knowing the sky will one day answer his name? Long before fences cut the land and towns learned how to sleep at night, the West was raw and untamed. Mountains rose like broken teeth. Storms rolled without warning. And men ruled by fear, not law. At the center of it all stood Calder Stone, the most powerful ranch baron the frontier had ever known. He owned land as far as the eye could see, water rights, cattle routes, judges, guns. Calder believed one thing: power only survives if no one lives long enough to challenge it. Every son born to him was seen as a threat, every cradle a future betrayal, so Calder made sure no son of his ever grew tall enough to stand against him. His wife, Ruth Stone, watched her children disappear one by one, not buried, not mourned, erased. By the time her final child was due, Ruth had stopped crying. Grief had sharpened into something colder. When labor came, she did not call for help. She wrapped a stone in cloth and placed it in the cradle instead. That night, Calder Stone believed he had finished his work. The real child was already gone. Ruth fled into the high desert, then deeper into the mountains where trails vanished and maps failed. Snow cut her skin, wind tore at her clothes, but she kept moving. She left the boy with a quiet family who lived inside the mountain's shadow. People who didn't ask questions, people who knew how to disappear. They named the boy Ethan Cole. Ethan grew up where the land was steep and unforgiving. He learned to walk on rock, to listen to the wind, to read the sky like a warning. Storms followed him when he was angry. Clouds gathered when he laughed. Rain softened the dust. Lightning struck close, never touching him, like it recognized something familiar. No one told him why. By the time Ruth returned, Ethan was already taller than most men, stronger, quieter. There was weight in the way he stood. She told him everything in one breathless night, about his brothers, about Calder Stone, about the lie that saved his life. Ethan said nothing. The next morning, he saddled a horse and rode down from the mountains. Calder Stone did not recognize the young man standing in his house. Why would he? The dead do not usually return. Ethan spoke calmly, offered his father a drink, waited when Calder swallowed. The past came back up with it. Truth spilled into the open. The sons he thought erased were alive, scattered, broken, but breathing. The ranch exploded into chaos. What followed wasn't a single fight. It was a decade of blood and dust. Families split, towns burned. The land itself seemed to groan under the weight of it. Ethan didn't lead with cruelty, he led with patience. He freed men Calder had buried under fear. He armed those who had nothing left to lose. He learned to use the storms that obeyed him. Thunder became his warning, lightning his verdict. When the final confrontation came, it wasn't loud. Calder Stone stood alone beneath a blackened sky. No guards, no allies. Just a man who had ruled too long by swallowing his future. Ethan did not kill him. He left him buried beneath the land he once claimed. Powerless, unheard, forgotten. The West changed after that. Ethan took no ranch, claimed no crown. He built something new in the high peaks where storms gathered. A place where law mattered, where oaths were sacred. People began calling him the Storm Judge. He married Hannah Cole, a woman whose strength was quieter but unbreakable. She ruled the home the way he ruled. The sky, steady, watchful, exacting. Ethan loved fiercely, too fiercely. He walked into towns under different names, helped strangers, left children behind who would one day feel the storm in their bones. Hannah knew. She always knew, and she never forgot. Still, the world held together. Barely. From his high ridge, Ethan watched the land stretch into darkness, so much order built on thin ground, so many storms waiting. He closed his hand, and thunder rolled low across the plains. Somewhere beyond the horizon, something old began to stir, something that remembered the time before. Ethan Cole ever rode down from the mountains, and the sky leaned closer, listening. The storm did not come all at once. It gathered. Low clouds pressed against the mountains where Ethan Cole made his home. The air felt heavy. Animals grew restless. Men spoke softer without knowing why. Hannah noticed first. She stood at the edge of the ridge, one hand resting against the porch rail, watching the sky darken in slow layers. She had lived with Ethan long enough to recognize the signs. This wasn't weather. This was memory. Ethan said nothing when she joined him. He rarely did. When the past came calling, below them, the land stretched wide and quiet. Ranches, towns, roads, stitched together by fragile trust. Everything he had built rested on balance, and balance was never permanent. That night, thunder rolled without rain. It echoed through the valleys like a warning meant for something buried too deep to hear clearly. Far below the surface of the world, chains groaned. Calderstone had not died. Ethan had made sure of that. The old man existed in a place without light, pinned beneath the weight of his own land. Trapped in silence, so complete it felt like erasure. Years passed, decades, maybe, but power, once held, does not forget itself. In the dark, Calder dreamed. Not of sons, not of regret. He dreamed of hunger, above ground. Ethan's rule held, but not without strain. The children he'd left behind began to grow. They came quietly at first, men and women drawn to the mountains by instinct. They could not explain. Some arrived with anger, others with questions. They all felt the sky respond. To them, Ethan did not send them away. He taught them instead how to listen to the wind, how to wait before acting, how to hold power without letting it hollow them out. Hannah watched them train in silence. She saw strength rising again, scattered and unpredictable. She also saw the danger. One evening, as firelight danced across the walls, she spoke what Ethan had avoided. "They're not just like you," she said. "They're yours." Ethan stared into the flames. "Yes," he said quietly, "and they'll outgrow me." Hannah reached for his hands. "You can't keep the sky locked forever." "No," he said, "but I can teach it restraint." The next day, the earth shook. It was subtle. A tremor felt more in the bones than underfoot. Birds scattered. Water rippled. In troughs, Ethan stiffened. That night, rain finally fell. Hard, cold, relentless, and with it came a dream Ethan hadn't had since the war. A voice. Old, familiar, smiling in the dark. "You buried me alive, son. Did you think silence would hold me?" Ethan woke before dawn, breath steady but eyes sharp. He walked alone into the storm at the edge of the world, where the mountains dropped into a scarred canyon. He stopped. Lightning split the sky, illuminating stone and shadow. From the depths came a sound, like laughter grinding against rock. Ethan raised his hand. The storm paused. "Stay where you are," he said, voice carrying through wind and rain. "I ended you once," the ground answered with another tremor. "You ended nothing. You delayed it." Ethan felt it then. Not fear. Recognition. Something older than Calder was stirring. Something born from the earth itself. Of force that had waited patiently while sons replaced fathers. An order pretended it was permanent. He returned, home soaked and silent. Hannah met him at the door. "Begun," he said. She didn't ask what. By morning, messengers arrived from every direction. Reports of cracked ground, collapsed tunnels, livestock refusing to drink from familiar streams. The world was shifting beneath its own weight. Ethan gathered his children on the ridge. They stood in a loose circle, faces lit by gray dawn, each carrying a fragment of the storm in their eyes. "There's something coming," he told them. "Something that doesn't care who rules." One of them, a young man with lightning scars across his palms, stepped forward. "Then, let us fight it." Ethan shook his head. "This isn't a war, it's a reckoning." He looked at them one by one. "You will hold the sky when I can't." But words settled heavy. That night, Hannah stood alone again, watching clouds roll in thick and low. Ethan was already gone, riding toward the canyon where the earth whispered secrets. She pressed a hand to her chest. For the first time, the storm did not answer her fear. It waited. The canyon breathes. Not wind. Water. Something older. Ethan Cole felt it before he saw it. The horse beneath him slowed on its own, hooves uneasy against stone that hummed with pressure. The air tasted sharp, like iron before lightning. This was not a place meant for men. It was a scar left behind. When the world was still deciding what it would become, Ethan dismounted and continued on foot. Each step downward carried weight, not fear, memory. The canyon walls rose high and close, narrowing the sky to a thin ribbon of gray. The deeper he went, the quieter the storm became, as if even thunder knew better than to intrude. At the bottom, the ground split open, a fissure wide enough to swallow sound. Chains stretched across it, ancient and thick, embedded into the rock itself. They pulsed, faintly, not with light, but with strain. Ethan placed a hand on the stone. It was warm from the darkness below. A voice rose slow and satisfied. "You came alone. I always knew you would." Coldstone did not look like a man anymore. What remained of him was bound in shadow and his body pressed into the canyon's heart as if the land itself refused to let him go. His eyes still burned. "You don't rule here," Ethan said. Calder smiled. "No, son, but neither do you." The ground trembled. Just enough to remind them both of where true power rested. Calder's voice dropped, becoming something almost reverent. "You built order on top of old bones. You called it justice. But the world remembers what came before." Ethan stepped closer to the edge. "The world changes." Calder laughed softly. "But men change. Power. One. Front. Deep within the fissure, something shifted. A pressure rolled outward, slow and massive, like a giant turning in its sleep. Ethan felt it then, not Calder, something far older, a force born of buried rage and endless patience. The earth itself, tired of carrying the weight of gods and men alike. Calder's smile widened. "You've chained me to this place, but you woke it when you did. I was only the door." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment. So this was the cost. Every order demands a reckoning. Every storm leaves something broken behind. He raised both hands. The sky answered. Thunder rolled down into the canyon, controlled, deliberate. Lightning traced the chains, reinforcing them, sealing fractures before they could widen. The pressure resisted, not violently, inevitably. Ether strained, breath steady, jaw tight. This was not something to defeat, only something to delay. From above, a voice echoed down the stone walls. "Ethan, Hannah." He turned. She stood at the rim of the canyon, cloak pulled tight against the wind, eyes fixed on him with a calm that masked fear. "You shouldn't be here," he called. She shook her head. "You don't get to face this alone." Another tremor rippled through the ground, but Ethan looked back at Calder. The old man's expression had changed, not triumph, relief. "You always were the right one," Calder said quietly, strong enough to hold it back, too honorable to let it go. Ethan understood then that Calder had never wanted to escape. He wanted a witness, someone to pass the burden to. Ethan turned away from the fisher Hannah. He said, voice low, "If I don't come back." She raised a hand. "Don't." The storm gathered above them, darker now, heavier. Ethan felt the pull of it, the familiar call of release, but release would end everything. He stepped into the fissure. The chains flared bright, wrapping tighter around the chasm as he placed himself at its center. Power surged through him, not explosive, but constant, like holding back the tide with bare hands. The earth groaned far away on the mountain ridge. The children felt it. They stopped what they were doing, looked up at the sky. Something had shifted. Ethan's voice echoed upward, carried by wind and stone. "The balance holds," he called. "For now." Hannah watched as the light faded, as the canyon settled into uneasy stillness. Ethan did not climb out. The storm did not break. Night fell slowly, carefully, as if the world feared what might happen if it moved too fast. Hannah remained at the edge until the stars came out one by one. Below her, the earth was quiet, too quiet. The world did not end. It held its breath, Morning came without birdsong. Clouds hung low, unmoving, like they were waiting for permission to drift. The storm that had lived above the canyon stayed locked in place, a dark crown pressed against the sky. Hannah did not leave the rim. She sat on a flat stone with her cloak wrapped tight, eyes fixed on the quiet below. No lightning, no thunder, only a deep stillness that felt heavier than noise. The children arrived, one by one, as the sun climbed. They came on foot, on horseback, drawn by something pulling at their bones. No one spoke at first. They looked at the canyon, then at Hannah. He went in. She said simply. No explanation followed. None was needed. A young woman stepped forward, wind tugging at her dark hair. Her palms sparked faintly when she clenched them. Is he alive? Hannah paused. Yes, she said, but not the way you mean. They stood together, feeling the truth. Settled. Ethan had not been taken. He had chosen. Below them, the canyon floor glowed faintly. Veins of light pulsing slow and steady like a massive heartbeat. The chains held. For now, the children felt it. A pressure, easing, a warning remaining. Days passed. The land healed. Cautiously, cracks closed. Water returned to streams that had gone bitter. Animals ventured back into open fields. But the storm did not move. At night, Hannah dreamed of Ethan standing in the dark, hands braced against invisible weight, eyes calm, jaw set. He never called out. He never asked for help. She woke each time with her heart steady and heavy. On the seventh night, the storm spoke, not with thunder, with wind. It carried Ethan's voice across the ridge, quiet but clearless, and the children gathered at once. The voice came again. This world will never be still. Don't try to make it so. Hannah closed her eyes. You taught us restraint, one of them called into the wind. What now? There was a pause, long enough to feel like absence. Then, softly, now you learn release. The clouds shifted for the first time. Rain fell, gentle, measured, the storm loosened its grip below the surface. The pressure eased just enough for the earth to rest. Ethan had found the balance point. Not dominance, not surrender, endurance, weeks turned into months. Hannah took her place among the children, not as ruler, but as anchor. She listened more than she spoke when storms rose too fast. She calmed them when tempers flared. She reminded them what power cost. Stories spread of a man bound to the earth to hold it together, of a judge who chose the weight so others could walk free. People left offerings at the canyon's edge. Water. Quiet prayers whispered into the stone. No one tried to dig. No one tried to break the chains. They understood far below. Coldstone felt the change. The hunger that had driven him for a lifetime dulled. Not gone, but quieted. You chose well, he admitted into the dark. Ethan did not answer. He no longer needed to. Time moved differently where he stood. Moments stretched. Memories blurred. He felt the seasons pass through the rock. Spring's soft push. Summer's heat. Autumn's letting go. Winter's patience. He was not trapped. He was placed above him. The children grew into their strength. They learned to carry storms without letting them rule. They spread out across the land, guiding, correcting, protecting. No single throne, no single crown. Balance. Shared. One night, years later, Hannah returned to the canyon alone. Her hair had gone silver at the edges. Her steps were slower. She sat where she always had. I'm tired, she said to the stone, but I'm not afraid. The earth hummed softly in response. She smiled. I knew you'd listen. When she left, the storm lifted completely. The sky cleared for the first time in years. Stars filled the dark, bright and endless, far beneath the surface. Ethan felt it. Release, not escape. Not an end, a shift. The weight remained, but it no longer pressed against him alone. Others had taken hold. The world exhaled, and for the first time since the canyon opened, the earth slept without dreaming of hunger. The land remembered. Even after the storm lifted and the sky cleared, the ground carried echoes of what had been held beneath it. Fields grew greener, rivers ran steadier, but people walked softer, like they knew the earth was listening now. The children felt the change. Most. Power no longer surged through them in sudden bursts. It moved slower, deeper. Like breath, learned through patience. They gathered less often on the ridge. Instead, they spread across the wide country, answering quiet calls instead of loud disasters. A town divided by fear, a river flooding its banks, a leader gripping power too tightly. They did not arrive as judges, they arrived as reminders. Hannah watched them go, one by one. She had stopped counting years. Time had become something. Circular. Morning chores. Evening. Firelight. Long walks along the ridge, where the canyon waited in silence. Sometimes she felt Ethan, close, not as a voice, as a steadiness, in her chest. One afternoon, a boy arrived, alone. He couldn't have been more than 16. Dust clung to his boots. His eyes flickered when clouds passed overhead. "I don't know why I'm here," he said. Hannah studied him carefully. "Yes, you do," she replied. He swallowed. "I feel heavy, like something's pulling on me from below." Hannah nodded. "That means you're early," she said gently. "I'm lucky." She took him to the edge of the canyon. The boy stiffened the moment he looked down. The stone pulsed faintly, steady and calm. "What is it?" he whispered. Hannah rested a hand on his shoulder. "It's the place where the world learned restraint." That night, the boy dreamed of chains made of light, of hands holding them, not in struggle, but in purpose. When he woke, the fear was gone. He stayed. Others followed, not many, just enough. They did not train as soldiers. They learned to listen, to sense pressure before it became disaster, to step in early and step back even sooner. Far below, Ethan felt their presence, not as replacements, as companions. The weight shifted again, distributed, shared. For the first time since he stepped into the fissure, he felt something close to rest. Memory drifted through him. Hannah's voice, the mountain air, the first storm he ever called without meaning to. He was not fading. He was becoming something quieter, colder stone, bound in deeper shadow. Felt it too. The hunger that had once defined him was almost gone now. What remained was a strange awareness. "You won," he said, into the dark. Not with force, with patience. Ethan did not answer. The lesson no longer needed words. But the world continued. Children were born who would never know the old fear. Leaders rose and fell, without tearing the land apart. Storms came and went, fierce but brief, and the canyon remained, a place people passed without naming, without claiming. On a cool evening, Hannah felt her strength ebb. She sat near the fire and watched the embers glow. A young woman knelt beside her, one of the children, grown now, steady and kind. "Do you need anything?" she asked. Hannah smiled faintly. "I need you to remember." The woman nodded. A double quotes what? "That power is borrowed," Hannah said, "and the earth always wants it back." That night, Hannah slept and did not wake. The land did not mourn loudly. It settled. The storm did not return. They laid Hannah to rest near the ridge, where the sky was wide and the ground strong. No marker, no monument, just a place where the wind slowed when it passed. Far below, Ethan felt the shift, a door closing gently, a hand letting go. Grief moved through him, slow and deep, but it did not break him. It grounded him further. Years passed, generations. The canyon became a legend told in half sentences, a warning wrapped in calm. Those who felt the pull still came, those who didn't passed by unaware, and beneath it all, the balance held. One evening, long after Hannah's name had softened into memory, the earth stirred again, not in anger, in release. Ethan felt the chains loosen just a fraction more, enough to breathe, enough to change. Above, a child stood on the ridge, staring at the sky with quiet wonder. Clouds gathered instinctively, not threatening, just attentive. The child smiled. Somewhere deep beneath the stone, something ancient shifted its weight and settled, not to rise, not to hunger, but to rest. The world turned on. The world learned how to rest without forgetting. That seasons continued their quiet turning. Spring softened the valleys. Summer warmed the plains. Autumn taught release. Winter returned the gift of stillness. Nothing ruled alone anymore. The canyon remained, unchanged to the eye, but deeply altered in spirit. No storms gathered above it now. No thunder waited in the clouds. Instead, There was balance. Those who walked near it felt something difficult to name, a calm that asked for honesty, a weight that did not crush, but clarified. Far below. Ethan Cole still held the world together, but he no longer held it alone. The hands that had joined him over the years remained steady. They did not strain, they did not demand, they listened. Power flowed through them like a slow river, not a flood. Shared. Measured. Ethan felt the earth breathe around him. The pressure that once pushed now rested evenly, like a mountain settled into its true shape. He remembered Hannah. Not as lost as presence. Her steadiness lingered in the way that land no longer panicked when storms rolled through. In the way people paused before acting, as if they sensed consequence more clearly now. Time moved differently here. Ethan could no longer count here, but he felt moments, births, deaths, choices made with care. He was no longer the storm judge, he was the quiet center caller. Stone remained below, bound deeper still, but changed. The hunger that once defined him had thinned into something like understanding. At last, he spoke again. So this is how it ends, he said. Not fire, not conquest. Ethan answered. For the first time in many seasons. It doesn't end, he said. It holds. Calder laughed softly, then fell silent forever. Above ground, the last of the storm-born children grew old. They did not cling to their strength, they taught it. When they felt the pull of the canyon weaken, they did not fear it. They trusted the next generation. And so the work continued, not as worship, not as rule, as care. One night, long after stories of Ethan Cole had blurred into myth, a young woman stood alone on the ridge. She had come because something inside her had asked her to. The sky was clear, the stars sharp and close. She knelt and placed her hand on the stone. Nothing dramatic happened, no light, no voice, but she felt it, a quiet welcome below. Ethan sensed her presence. Another steady point, another breath added to the whole. The weight shifted, just enough. For the first time since the canyon opened, Ethan felt something like release ripple fully through him. Not escape, completion. The chains dissolved into light and sank into the earth, no longer needed as barriers, but remembered as lessons. The pressure spread evenly through the land itself. The earth had learned. Ethan stepped back, not upward, not downward, but inward. He was no longer bound to one place. He was part of the balance, the canyon seal, leaving no scar, just stone, just ground. The world did not notice. That was the point. Storms still came, but they passed. Power still tempted, but it no longer ruled. Alone, people learned, slowly, that nothing lasts forever, and that was not a curse, it was mercy. Some nights, when the wind moved just right across the plains, it carried a low rumble. Not thunder. Memory. And those who listened felt steadier for it. So now, as your breathing slows and the edges of the day soften, remember this. Not all heroes rise, some remain. Not all power conquers, some carries. And not all endings are losses, some are balances. Finally learned, sleep gently. The world is being held, and it no longer needs to be afraid. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.